Now, logic would have you believe that a wider float would result in more factory new skins, more easily accessible, more trade-ups, but it's actually the opposite. The Tec-9 Whiteout has a float range of 0.06 to 1. Compare that to other whiteouts, which have a float range of 0.06 to 0.8. On the surface, it sounds easier, right? But it's actually the opposite. That extra range creates a mathematical gate that most people simply don't do the research to understand fully. But luckily, you're here. And if the Train 2025 collection gets discontinued in the next rotation this March, which, based on Valve's previous behavior with collections that underperform, seems likely, which will result in one of the best plays, if not the best play, the Armory will ever offer us in the history and future of the Armory. Let me show you why. Welcome to Debate, our new series on this channel in which we will explore different theories, ideas about the market so that we may open up conversation in the comments on Twitch, which will only result in all of us having a better understanding of the market and how it works. I am taking community suggestions for this series, so if you have a play which you have a lot of conviction in, or is just something you've been thinking about theory-wise, scan the QR code here and leave your response. With that being said, let's get into the video. Now, if you've watched any of my previous videos about the Armory or the news, then you've heard me speak about the Glock-18 Green Line and the UMP-45 Late Night Transit. Both are blue rarities within the Train 2025 collection, and they are the only two of which that carry a full 0-to-1 float cap. Typically, from what we've seen from previous precedents, the purples tend to rise the most when collections get discontinued, percentage-wise. And I say typically because it certainly depends on the guns within the collection. In the case of Train 2025, the blues will probably have the most upside, and I'll show you why. For one, the Tec-9 isn't just any purple. It's rather desirable. Whiteouts are one of the most popular skins in the game. And as we know, whiteout skins are notoriously hard to unbox or trade up to, specifically in factory new, and that's because it carries a float range starting at 0.06, meaning that range for factory new is only 0.06 to 0.07. Now, most skins, as I mentioned, the P250 Whiteout, the MP7 Whiteout, some other skins like the P250 Bengal Tiger, and all gloves, they also share the 0.06 to 0.07 range for factory new. But what separates the Tec-9 from these skins is that it ranges from 0.06 to 0.8. The Tec-9 ranges from 0.06 to 1. Now, if you heard it in passing, you might intuitively think, okay, the Tec-9 is easier to get, but it's actually worse, way worse. Now, as we should know by now, to get a factory new skin, your 10 inputs in a trade up need to average out to within the factory new range of the output skin. For the whiteout, that range is 0.01. Now for skins with the range of 0.06 to 0.8, that's a 0.74 range, means you need around a 0.0135 average float for all 10 of your inputs. For the Tec-9, that range is now 0.94. Well, that means you're going to need an average float of around 0.0106. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a 20% gap between the two. Now for a 0.0135, you could realistically use some 0.02s, use some 0.01s, and get that average under 0.0135, and those 0.02s might not even cost any overpay if you get lucky. But for 0.0106, if you use a 0.02 in there, you're gonna need to compensate heavily in the other direction with a very low float Glock or UMP, and those typically range in the high 20s, low 30s right now. So that small difference in float requirements could potentially create like a $30, $40, $50 difference in those two trade-offs. So already with the Tec-9, we're dealing with more money to get it. And it gets worse. Now you still could use the other blues within the Train 2025 collection, but they don't have a 0-to-1 float cap. And this is why 0-to-1 matters the most. Because if you want to use the FAMAS or the XM in the Train collection, your average float, if you use 10 XMs, your average float is gonna need to be 0.00795. For the FAMAS, 0.009112, right? Your average needs to take into account your input's float cap, which just lowers the amount of eligible guns you're going to be able to use. So the pipeline is not just narrow, it's extremely expensive. So let's take a look at the actual numbers. Right now, there are around 2,750 Tec-9 Whiteouts in factory new. Through two majors, 50 of those are souvenirs. That's how rare they are to get. So we'll remove those and we're left with 2,700. We're just gonna deal with the Armory. Now, the skin's been in the game for around 10 months to the day. Now, assuming redemptions were more frequent in the start of the Train 2025 collection, we could give a generous estimate of around 180 to 200 being unboxed per month right now. If it gets discontinued this March, which seems likely considering it's the lowest redeemed by a large margin, we can estimate final supply to be around 3,100, maybe 3,200 if the redemptions increase after Valve announces the discontinuation, in which they typically give us 2 weeks to respond and redeem in the wake of news. So let's look at blue supplies, right? Because it's the pipeline to get the Tec-9. And we do need to look in the ranges, right? Not every Glock in factory new is going to be eligible. We can't realistically use a .06 here if we want a Tec-9 Whiteout without it costing an exorbitant amount of money. So Glocks under .0106 is going to be 2,033 according to CS Float. UMPs under the same range, 1,812. XMs under .00795, around 1,500 flat. And for the FAMASs, which need to be under .00912, 1,463. That leaves us with 6,808 eligible inputs. So if we do 6,800 10% trade-ups, or 3,400 20% trade-ups, it doesn't really matter. The expected amount of purples from the train collection in which we will get will be around 680. There are 3 purples in the train collection though, so only 1 in 3 will be a Tec-9 Whiteout, which lowers our theoretical supply coming in from trade-ups to be maximum 230. Of course, there is a margin of error with expected values, so we can give a liberal estimate. We'll say anywhere from 200 to 260, plus or minus 30. But of course, not every eligible blue is going to be used. People are going to hold them. People are going to get banned, whatever it may be. But the theoretical maximum supply using this pipeline will be around 3,400. Realistically, the market will never hit that. Now, if you want to hunt for these low float skins and don't know where to go, try UUSkins, the single-handedly best alternative to the Steam market in NA and EU. MP7 Astrolabe, which I talked about yesterday, a .006 float on Steam, sold for $12. On UU, market price, $3. It's very easy to have leverage and fantastic positions when everything you buy is 40% off every other market. No VPNs, no middlemans, no trade bans, delivery guaranteed within 10 hours, and a 24/7 live support. They've got everything, and that includes their inventory. Every single item in the game, hundreds of instances, so you could choose any sticker, charm, craft you'd like. QR code is on the screen, link will be in the description and pinned comment. Back to the video. Now, something very interesting a chatter in my stream last night pointed out to me. The light blue supplies, specifically in factory new, should be an order of magnitude higher than the Glock, UMP, XM, FAMAS in terms of supply, but they're not. In most instances, they're less than double. It definitely should be higher, but luckily and fortunately for us, we don't give a fuck. All that means is that trading up to a blue with a low enough float to be eligible to even get to the Tec-9 factory new realistically, that pipeline is going to be even more constrained than what the surface lets on. If we theoretically took every single of these light blues that were eligible and traded them up, which will never happen, it's around 10,000 light blues, or 1,000 blues, or 100 purples, 1/3, 33 Tec-9 Whiteouts, maximum, if every 10% hits, won't happen. Basically a negligible number, but we'll add it to the supply anyway. So now we're at 3,430 theoretical max supply. And with that contextualized, you see that the real constraint isn't how many Tec-9s exist, but how many can exist until the end of time. That's why the Glock and UMP are so important. They provide the best entryway into the pipeline. Yes, you can use the FAMAS, and yes, you can use the XM1014, but those float requirements are going to be way more unforgiving because of how trade-ups work now. So those supply constraints we looked at on the float database, those are going to be your targets. Glock and UMP under .0106, FAMAS under .00912, XM under .00795. Yes, they will require overpay over the market price. But when discontinuation happens and prices trend upwards, they will scale with time and probably scale with the floor price, maybe even a little bit more so. So let's contextualize this finally. The USP-S Whiteout from the Train 2021 collection. It is a pink pistol, and even though it's more rare and has no souvenirs available, its supply sits around 4,400 in factory new. Despite that, it still carries a $1,000 price tag most of the time. The Tec-9 is a purple, so compared to the USP, its inputs are relatively cheap. Even though the inputs are relatively cheap, the inputs are more scarce because it is harder to get the Tec-9 Whiteout than the USP Whiteout due to math, not even including rarity. Now, the Tec-9 is not used as much as the USP, so will it reach USP levels? Probably not. However, $600 to $700 from its current $300 to $400 range right now, definitely not unreasonable. In fact, probable in my estimation. So here's what we have. We have a desirable skin on a well-used and well-liked gun at a low rarity. It has a deceptive float range, which makes it harder to craft, and it has a pipeline of skins all the way down to the bottom, whose value is almost entirely derived from the Tec-9's value. And those supply precursors appear much more infrequently than we'd ought to think. So when, and not if, the trained collection gets discontinued, maybe right now, next month, maybe the next update, those blues and purples stop entering the market. Consumers and the market stop pricing them as consumable items, and rather start pricing them as a function of their use case, like a key. This is why I've been saying the Glock Green Line and the UMP Late Night Transit are worth watching. Their value is intrinsic. They literally can't go down. They have a floor set in place. And their function and the setup is just too good. And beyond like the Tec-9 getting nerfed or removed from the game, I can't see a situation or problem that arises that leads to these losing their value realistically. Now obviously any play in this market is risky, but there are some damn ones that look almost 100%, and this is certainly one of them. Keep your eyes peeled on this collection over the next 6 to 8 weeks. It could very well be your last buying opportunity. That's it for debate. Leave thoughts in the comments, the Discord, or on Twitch, where we'll discuss it later as a group. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the situation. Peace.